Today, I'm walking through my process for setting up procedural animation in UE5, starting all the way back in Blender with rigging. Okay, in Blender, I'm using Rigify. It's a Blender add-on that generates humanoid armatures. First thing I do, I scale everything up. Blender just handles automatic weights better when it's larger. I'm speeding this part up just because it's kind of boring. I'm just modifying the armature. See, we want it to kind of fit the main proportions, but we'll be using automatic weights. It's got very wide legs and a wide pelvis, which be very good to kind of showcases the IKs and his legs. But I wonder, will the texture break? Got nice big hands as well. I might be able to do something with that. Just putting on the bones for his kind of face. And once the weights are applied, it's important to check that every bone is moving right and it's not affecting any vertices they shouldn't. For this video, I picked a really simple mesh, so I don't really have to worry too much about cleaning up weights. So I'm fairly happy with that. I'll save that and export it. And then once everything is working, I scale the mesh back down and I send it on over to Unreal. One thing I do wish though, I wish Unreal had a proper height tool in the skeleton mesh tab, because judging scale by eye is it's not easy. And scale is important. It matters for if you don't want your animations sliding around. Inside Unreal, I set up the animation blueprint and a control rig. You can see me here fumbling with spelling. I don't have a good setup right now, but yeah. So on over into this is the control rig. Here I'm just adjusting the window so it kind of it's good to look at. Here we choose the hierarchy, so we choose the mesh that we just made. And this will export this guy here. UE with its settings. It's such a weird way to do that. You have to open a window to change the camera speed. Here he is, admire as you will. Gluteus Maximus. Kinda creepy looking feller. Alright, we're gonna set up IK, inverse kinematics. Mapping out the bones. Here it is foot, shin, thigh. Those are the items that are the main three bones we'll be using. All on the right side. So there's his leg. Looks great, doesn't it? Right, the problem here is it doesn't know what to do with the leg. It doesn't know what direction it's facing, doesn't know where to go. It's a bit lost until we give it some input. So what is this? Good question. Let's remove the values. Now you need the primary and secondary axes of the bones, and then the pole vector. For this Rigify armature, it's usually the same every time, but to be sure, you check the skeleton tab, and the primary axis is Y at -1, and then the secondary axis is Z at -1. Here I'm just looking through the bones, making sure. So do you see the widget, the arrows? The green arrow is pointing up, so we want to be going down. That is -Y, because the green arrow is +Y. Put that in, and now the leg knows that, okay, it's a facing down bone. But it's still looking a bit off because it doesn't know where the next one is. And so down here in the foot, it's not in the thigh, it's in the foot. We have to choose what way it's, what direction it's going. Had to double check here a couple of times because it's not something I remember. I thought it was -Y here, and look what happens. Gets confused again, and so I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So yeah, I'm kind of just messing with values, trying to look. I think I decide to go back to another project with the same armature. Yeah, I look at this Crimson Guard here. He has the same, but pretty much the same system. Here it's -X or -Z. So I put it in that value, the leg straightens out a bit. But it doesn't know what direction the knee has to be facing, right? It doesn't know what direction we're bending the knee. And that, I think, is to do with the pole vector. So the pole vector here is Y, the green arrow. Slap in a big number here. Something like 1,000 or 10,000. Doesn't really matter. Alright, now the leg looks pretty good. There's a few other values you can put in if it's not looking right, but it'll do. And the effector then is set to the foot bone, and then from here we can build our procedural animation. I'm plugging in the location, the translation, and the scale. Oh, the rotation, the translation, and the scale. So it knows it's just taking the foot bone and putting it in. So we want to get an evaluate curve. It's basically a timeline without the time. And we want to try and move the foot with that. So we add it to the translation. Here I'm just setting the curve up beforehand. So the idea is we want to try and make a curve that moves the foot forward and back. So up and down. So on a straight line, I'd moved the two values on the side up to 1. And the key in the middle at half a second is at 0. Now the distance we want to move, I put in a small value at first. I think it was like 10, but the skeletal mesh is actually very big. So depending on the size of your armature, this here may vary. I think a good size was like 100, and then I think I get accumulate time. So for every second, it like output a value, right? Plug that in and see what we get. Okay, so I'm not sure if you noticed that. His foot kind of scratched. It's because it's done 1 second and that's it. We want to modulate between 1 second. So every time a second happens, it's gonna do this curve. And now you can see he's shimmying, he's sliding back and forth. So we increase the value here. And there we have it. Now his leg begins to slide back and forth. It's a good start. So how do I move that to the other foot? I want to copy the curve, I want to copy the modulate, and I want to copy the add. I paste that down, boom. Then I want to take the leg IK, slap that down, and I'll connect that up. So we want to map out the right bones on the leg IK. So this is on the other side of the body. So let's just map it out. The values should be the same because Blender is quite consistent that way. But it will look wrong if you're not using the right bones. So just play around with it, and the more you get accustomed to it, the more you know what you can do. Then I get the foot bone here. We take the rotation and the scale, and we mess with the translation. So now we have it. Oh wait, it's not hooked up to the time. Plug that in here, and now we have it. He's on a swing. So I'm kind of just looking at everything, making sure everything's nice and clean. I want to try and keep this nice and organized so it's kind of easy to follow. So I clean up the right. So to offset the foot time, I do 0.5 to the modulate, and that should offset the second by half. And now he's an ice skater. The most basic of movements. Right, I just gotta clean this up now, make it nice. I like to give a lot of space for everything. So we have one foot or one leg and then the other leg. I drag that out, and I think I want to offset the pelvis. So he kind of moves his body with the step. So I'll grab his lower spine area and just making sure, because here you can see which bone is the parent of which, and I grab the lower spine, and we set that to get a nice bend in the knees. Hook that up. It won't make a difference right now until we put it until we change the value, right? So I'm just thinking through, making sure I know what I'm doing. What we want to do is we connect all the other values except translation, because we want to edit the movement. So we grab that and we want to add to it. I always do add even when I subtract. It's just, you can do subtract here as well. But we want to minus a number. And now his feet, or his whole body has been lowered, right? But we want to counter that with the height of what that's giving us. So we take the height from the feet and we subtract it. And there we go. Now he's sliding back on the floor and he's got a bit of a bend in his leg. Right? So you can see that his leg's kind of bending slightly. That's what we want. Showing it off here. Just if you manage to get this far, you're doing pretty good. Right, now when everything's nice and organized, I try and clean up everything again, give everything its space. Right, now we want to get a lift to every step. To do that, I just get another evaluate curve. And we need to plan a curve accordingly. So I flatten it out at first. And like we want to use it for just one of his legs, right? So it's just going to be his right leg right now that's going to be moving. And we want it to take a step. So first it'll be sliding and then he'll take a step, you know? So we want to make the curve pretty much at the end of the evaluate curve. Plug that into the modulo. And we decide here kind of the height. But to do that, I kind of always... Hold on, what am I doing here? Because the idea is I want to clamp it spatially to the thigh bone when I lift his leg, right? And we get an add from that, and we want to add, instead of adding to the Y, we want to be adding to the Z. And here, I think I'm getting everything ready. So we get the thigh bone to that side of the body. We plug everything in to the clamp spatially. It's the other way around. You're meant to clamp the add into spatial. You plug the add into clamp spatially. But it seems to be working out okay this way. So the problem here is that I have selected plane rather than sphere. So the clamp isn't actually working how it's supposed to. So it doesn't matter what value you put in, it's not going to work right. So I'm kind of like, what did I forget again? It takes me a second before I realize, wait a minute. And I was like, is it the maximum? Is it the minimum size? It's always a good idea to play around with these values so you kind of know and you learn. So here I kind of realized, wait a minute, this looks weird. Like, why is this so weird? And then I zoom out and I see it. I'm like, oh, it's a plane. So we want to change that to sphere. and we want to change the values. Minimum doesn't matter because we're just changing the maximum size. We're messing with the maximum size of that circle. So the idea is you want the first one to be smaller. I kind of got it backwards when I was doing this, but you want to have the small one first or he'll be walking backwards, right? Here's a perfect example. I'm like, wait a minute, why is this? Something's off here. Oh right, he's stepping backwards. I think it takes me a bit of brute forcing to get this right, but I'm like, okay, something's going weird. The idea is we want to clamp that sphere around his thigh bone so that it becomes smaller as he's lifting his foot, and that way it kind of stays local to his thigh. A good way to see what's going wrong is always just unplug stuff and then go through it separately. Still a bit confused, like, what am I doing wrong here? But it's a good example as to how many things can go wrong. Good way is to just brute force it. I think I got something to drink and I was like, oh, okay, now I realize what I'm doing wrong here. So now that we have the input right, the foot is following the circumference of the circle, right? We don't want it to follow that diameter. We want it to just shrink as it touches, as he's taking the step. We want the foot to stay on the ground. So we're gonna reduce that value from the hip value, right? And we're making sure the foot stays local to the ground, right? After adjusting some values, I find out it was something like 10 or 20. And now you can see his foot is not going through the ground at all, and it's following a straight line instead of like a curve. Yeah. Pretty happy with that, so I think I'm gonna copy it over to the next leg. Just double checking everything and copy that. And I take the add because we can use that for something else later, right? We don't need to delete that just yet. Make sure it's clamped to the proper tie. And we want to plug that into the modulo of the other leg. Right, now we've got some stampy stamps. To affect how that looks, you can always go into the curve and adjust the key points in the curve. But I think for now, I'm just... Yeah, I do go into that. So what you can do is you can auto the curve and just adjust it somewhere in that region. And then it will affect how the step is perceived. You want to keep the two ones at the bottom at 0 because that's what ground level is, but anywhere here you can just adjust and see what looks good for you. I'm just going with something very basic here. Because even just changing it a small bit will affect his walk, like his walk. Alright, and once you've got that done, we kind of want to just bounce his pelvis up and down a bit as he's walking, right? You want to have a kind of a weight to his motion. So I kind of move all this back, make sure that it stays away from the legs. I don't want to confuse everything. So I always give everything its space. So you have the legs over there. I'm gonna need that time. Could use another one, but I'm just gonna use this one. And I'm just kind of planning out what I'm gonna do next. So we want to bounce out his pelvis bone, right? We want that to kind of bounce with each step. And we're going to do that with an evaluate curve. And this curve is going to look a bit different. So the evaluate curve here, we want the pelvis or the lower spine to bounce twice for the walk cycle. So we're going to make 2 curves on this evaluate curve. So we'll add 3 keys, making it 5 in total, and we'll raise the second and the fourth one up to 1 or around that region. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you know how it is. I'll just grab the modulo, slap that in there. So it's the amount you want the pelvis to drop. That is your target. So I'm like, I can just make a new modulo, make it look cleaner. I disconnect that and I copy and paste it. I connect up the accumulated time. It's doing the same thing as it would, and I connect that into the Z. Looking at our target here, we can test out some numbers and see what we like. I'm just trying out some numbers, seeing what looks good here. But you can kind of get what I'm going for. The pelvis is bouncing up and down with each step. And then we want to counter the height that the pelvis is giving, and we'll counter it in the foot height. or the feet height. So I put in -20 here, and I'm like, yeah, that's about right. But I think I confused myself, and I put in some other values. Yeah. So in the source, that's just supposed to be 1, because that is the 1 second source, right? And our target should be around -20, because that's the height we had used earlier. That's why -20 will touch the ground here. But I'm confusing myself. I'm like, why is that bouncing? It shouldn't be bouncing, but we affect it. We have to counter that bounce in the foot IK. So we multiply that. Or no, what we can do is we can, yeah, multiply that. By -1, and plug that into the foot height where we're playing with our IK. There we go. And now you can see the pelvis bouncing and the feet countering in height. So he's essentially moving forward. I want to clean this up a bit. And you can mess with the graph to, you know, change the walk cycle a bit. Oh, we're gonna go into the folder where I have everything. Animation blueprint. And here we can search control rig, get our control rig, and so we just select our control rig and our animation. Then I go into the event graph, and we want to find his velocity here. And we save that as a variable. And call that velocity. And now you have an input value. It's taking the velocity of the controller. And then we take our velocity, but we can't connect it in just yet. We go into our control rig, we go into the blueprint and variables. Here we just get input velocity and make it a vector. Save that and make sure it is instance editable. Just a tick. Alright, now we have that. There's a pin here, instance editable. There we go. And that's all the data that it really needs. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that end length. So the idea here is we get the length of our velocity and we divide it by the amount we have moved. So this character, he moves 200 meters per second. and we can check that in our evaluate curve graph. I've got it plus 100, minus 100, which equates to about 200. And so I put that in there. Now he doesn't have a speed right now. The controller isn't inputting a speed, so he's stuck in place. It's like... Perfect. Ready to start a bit of Irish dancing. We can click on the vector, just put in 100, and he'll begin walking again at half his speed. Perfect. Alright, let's test them out. We go into our third person character. Connect up our skeletal mesh and our animation blueprint, or it'll look a bit busted. Now this is what I meant with scale in Blender. It's really hard to judge the size of the mesh and then import it to UE. It shouldn't make too much of a difference here. Make sure he's pointing forward. Just want to put in some clean values here. Minus 90. And then we adjust the height. This is kind of important because he's not tracing for the ground, so he doesn't know where the ground is. We have to kind of allocate the height accordingly. Just adjusting some rotation controller. Right, here we are, and now we can get the mesh to walk. Trying to see how well it matches with the ground. There's a small bit of sliding. I can mess with the values a bit more to get it right. Back to our control rig. Okay, in here I check maybe what does 100 look like. Right here you can see the sliding has increased. He's not getting very far and his feet slide back. So 200 fits better here. Looking at everything, seeing if I can... Here we can make the curve break. So we select break here. We want the first line to be straight, but the second line can curve. Do the same here. And now his feet will have kind of a better arc to them. Reduce the sliding a bit, but it's still happening.
We can adjust here the slope to make his feet stamp a bit. Well, I'm gonna try keep it quite central because it's just a simple walk animation. Yeah, so the two legs will look identical, and then here we can make the curve a bit smoother. We can auto the 2 or 3 keys. And the timing for the bounce we can affect by adding a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and this will essentially affect the timing of when the pelvis / spine will begin its bounce. So a good value here is tricky to find. It's whatever, it's more of a feeling. What you want to have is when the leg is at the straight most point or longest, you want to have the pelvis at its highest, and then when the legs are bent, you want to have the pelvis at the lowest point. So you just play around with these values. That doesn't look too bad. There's a lot of values you can put in here. You know, you can put in 1 through 9 to try to get the timing right. That doesn't look too bad either. So what I'm looking for here is how the legs, are they at their longest point when the pelvis is at the highest? It's kind of hard to see, but now I am seeing that the feet don't quite make the ground because the pelvis was up too high. Here you can see the feet make the ground because the pelvis is low enough. Well, I go with something like that. It makes the feet look more natural, and he seems to be going in some kind of synced motion. Test that out, and there you have it. Doesn't look half bad, does it?
Alright, and once you're happy with everything and it's all cleaned up, we're going to make the velocity relative to the rig. So we bring this back, we get our input velocity, and we convert it to rig space. But so the way we do that is we make it relative to the world space, and I'm not sure how this works. I just saw a video on how the idea is we get the rig space,
or the world velocity, right? And we convert that into the velocity we want by making that relative. Struggling here with the spelling as it normal, and right. We get from world. And we make that relative. And we just get another from world node and make that the parent. And it's easy as that. Then we replace. So the step is working in the y-axis. So we just have to remove the inputs for the y. So wherever we're adding, we take that. And this is why I said we can keep those add nodes, because now we can use them when we're adding our velocity. So what I do here is I disconnect the y input, and it looks like he's kind of marching now. Marching in the spot. Now, I wasn't quite sure. So I think I just connect up the unit to the velocity to a scale, because we want to see how far that scales up. But what we're supposed to do is connect that to a unit. So we get the unit in velocity and we scale that up. There we go. Connect that into your add module, and now he'll start walking again. This will allow him to walk in the full three dimensions. And we should do the same for the other side. So we get unit, like on the other side. We scale that. And we connect our Y. Easy as that. Save everything here. And we can check it out in the controller. But before we do that, we want to edit the controller a bit. Here I'm just putting a spring interp, which will essentially just stop the animation from sliding a bit, and it will try to stick to the closest whole number. So I try to reduce the sliding as much as I can. So
what we just done there is we made the velocity relative to the controller. So now that we changed the controller input orientation, it should lock the character. So now he can walk sideways, he can walk backwards. I've learned everything you see here off YouTube and other tutorials. So this is my first time trying to explain something like this, so like bear with me. I'm pretty happy with that, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.